Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. We've been talking this week about just the preciousness of time. And when you know about the preciousness of time, when all of that starts to come into mind, where you start to say, oh yeah, time is really precious. You know exactly when that is, right? Hey, Linda, good to see you. You know what it is. That time comes in and it says to you, this is precious when something unexpected happens. Somebody you love gets, injured or hurt or killed, God forbid. Somebody that you know's life cut short. Somebody that, something happens. You've been there. You've all been there. And I will tell you that there's no such thing as getting over somebody. Time heals all wounds. You hear that. And there's no such thing as getting over something. It's just you handle it differently. And I'm also one of the things that I get really kind of sick and tired of is, hi, Flynn. Hi, Susan, Emily. So good to see you. I get really tired of people like comparing. Well, you think that's bad. Well, for me, it was. And it was even worse because. And I think that when we get into this one-upsmanship of who had it worse and who had it harder, that we are diminishing and dismissing everybody else's pain. And what the point of this whole thing is, and why we're even talking about all of this, is how we need to put ourselves into the place of cherishing every single moment, because we never know. We are not given a timeline ever. We're not given anything. And if you remember what Sarah said, you remember what Sarah said. Sarah said yesterday her father was given 6 months and he lasted 24 days. My dad was given like 3 months or something. He lasted 11 days. Same idea. I think we play a role in our own death when we are given a death sentence like that. And that, we can, there's things going on. If you've ever been around somebody who's passing and they're in and out, of consciousness and what have you, I believe, the personal thing, I don't have a thing to back me up with this, but I believe that there's negotiation going on, or there's discussion going on, like God saying to God, hey, you know what? Let's just do this, and let's whatever, because when you're with somebody who's passing, sometimes they have really checked out and they're not quite there. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway. And I say all of that. And I also say to our dear Patsy, who had lost her son, and what she shared just broke my heart. I had a girlfriend, Sandy. She lost her daughter, passed away in her arms at 12 years old, walking across the room. Sudden cardiac event with, there's a word for it, and I don't know what it is. Forgive me. There's no preparation for that. There is no preparation for us to ever be ready to say goodbye to anybody. I mean, we might think that we're prepared, then it happens, and then we say, oh, I thought I was prepared, but I'm not. My girlfriend, Christina Rasmussen, who wrote a book called Second First, and I strongly recommend this book to anybody with any kind of loss, to understand what it is to be put in the waiting room of what this grief stuff is all about. She was a grief counselor. And then when she lost her husband to cancer in her 30s, and he was in his 30s as well, she had to readjust everything and the way she thought about everything. And it brings us all back to this place of how grief magnifies the loss and that hole inside of our heart, and the connection that we have to perhaps looking back and regretting the times that we said, I am just, I wish I hadn't yelled at the kids for that, or I wish I hadn't rushed my mom through that shower, or whatever it is. And that's why I'm kind of bringing all this up, because it's a circle of everything. Oh, Lily, we're with you. You know that? We are with you and we love you. And lots of prayers, as you know. But we're never prepared for this. We can't possibly prepare for something that we don't actually feel until we're there. We can imagine that it's going to be difficult. And we often say to people who go through difficult losses that I can't imagine what you're going through. And that's true. But what we can do is we can always be an encouragement to ourselves and to others to be the type of women who decide and make the decision that they're going to cherish every single moment, because we are all on that tenuous timeline of not knowing, period. We just don't know. So I think it's a bad habit then to miss out on these opportunities by being in this constant complaining, always finding the negative, instead of pushing that aside and saying, okay, so this is what I have, this is what I have, and this is where I am. These are the weird blessings in this whole situation. I mean, when I think about back to my mom's whole situation, and 5 years ago, right now, we were going through the whole vigil of watching and waiting and somebody constantly being with her. It was tough. And then she rallied, and for her birthday, she seemed like everything was going to be good. And then, that oftentimes happens. And our hospice nurse let us know that happens. But there's an opportunity in anything to find to find something to hold on to cherish and to love, and to say, at least we have this. Now, I'm not going to say that, of course, with, the worst imaginative thing that you can think of. I can't, of course not. But for most of this is how we can look at it. So with my mother, and selling her house, and I mean, we just made sweeping decisions. We didn't have time to waste. Sell your house, come here, live with me. I'll take care of you. It'll look like this, blah, 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 until it got bad. And then I was like, hey, Mom, you know what you need? You need someplace where somebody can be on 24/7. And that's, that was the decision then that we made. And the thing that I look back on was we actively looked for, and I did it especially, I had to do it for the both of us. Because my mother was a hand wringer. I told you about that. And she, if it wasn't absolutely perfect, then there was something wrong and the whole world was going to fall apart. She was the little, chicken in the hen yard yelling, the sky is falling. That's just the way she was put together. And I used to hold her hands and I used to tell her, I said, Mom, it's not perfect, but guess what? We're together. And she had such regrets. And she would say, I wish I had listened to you a long time ago and your sister about moving out here. Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I? And, we'd sit there and we'd cry for a minute. And I say, because your time to be here was now, and you get to be here with me. And we were together every single day. And everything, we had the moments, lots and lots and lots of cherished moments that would have just passed by I hadn't made a decision that I was going to cherish this, because I knew we were on a short timeline. I knew what the doctors had told me. I knew it was a short timeline, and I knew it was agonizing and awful. But we made a decision right then and there. Cherish all of that time. So how do we do that then, though? How do we just say, okay, I'm going to cherish time. Now what do I do? Now what do I do? How do I go from not complaining about all these things? And, it's dreadful, wiping somebody's butt, right? It is. It's not fun. It's not fun there's a lot of not fun things in this, involved in this. I had a girlfriend who came out and found her mother with dementia, had taken off her diaper and put poop all over her walls and all over her hands. Can you imagine? She had to clean that up. So what do we do? I believe we ask, we ask for eyes to see and ears to hear. For eyes to see and ears to hear. I think about the story of Paul on the road to Damascus, right? And the scales fall off his eyes and he can see for the first time. Finally he can see again because, he was blinded. You know the whole story. But think about that for a minute. We are so divinely connected to God that most of us don't, I don't think, recognize that and connect with that. or think that we have to go through some ritual of the church, or think about we have to say the right sinner's prayer or something. And sorry for anybody that that might offend, but I'm going to just say and go out on the limb and just say that I believe that there's a whole lot of more grace and latitude from a God who loves us, a God who purposely put us here on this earth to say that you are so darn important. Everything about you, I love. I created that freckle on your face. I gave you, those twinkly eyes. I did all of what I did for you. You're not perfect, but I love you all the same. I love you all the same. I think that we need to look for the opportunity to show up and to create cherishable moments at all times, and believe that before our feet even hit the floor, that there's an opportunity to find something that's cherishable, even in the midst of oxygen machines and doctors coming in and out and poop on the walls. Even in the midst of that we have the opportunity there. I think we need to look for less Kodak moments, less selfies, less pictures, and more imprinted, embedded memories in our minds of moments of love. Because those moments of love, that's the stuff that you get to take with you. I'm going to tell you the story of when my mom was going through some really serious stuff, and I'm probably going to cry my eyes out because I can barely say it, even think about it without crying. But it's a cherishable moment that made all the difference in the world, that made me understand and connect and know that we're all here by divine grace, on purpose and for purpose, and that we're dearly, dearly loved. If I can feel this pain of my mom passing, and you feel the same thing with your parent or a child or somebody who's passed, can you imagine what the God who placed you here on this earth feels for you as you feel this? Think about that. Number 2, you got to find the humor. You got to find the humor. My mother and I made jokes about everything, and they weren't pretty, I would even say, well, I am your trustee, Mom. I do have the check writing power. Or every once in a while I'd say, I think I'll just get out this checkbook and I don't know, car shop, just because. And she thought it was the funniest thing. And we'd sit there and we'd laugh. I shared this with my team the other day. We had an ongoing joke for a while, a long time. My mother hated little, crocheted doilies and things like that. And somebody thought she would like it and gave her this crocheted doily. And she said, look what I got. I said, yes, Mom, we can just put it right here. You can just put it right here. My mother had very, she liked modern things and just clean. And she's very organized, clean freak. Everything was in a row. And so, I took that doily, and she had this pretty Japanese teapot thing on her glass table in her dining room. And I took it and I put that doily underneath her teapot and never said anything. Well, that set off a game that we had for probably 5 years of hide the teapot. So my I left the house without ever seeing that. And then the next thing I know, I get to her house again and I don't see it there. And I think, whatever. I'm on an airplane. I'm in my purse. And what do you know? The doily's in there. So back and forth it went. And we had the best time with it. And, we did that up until a week before she passed away. We would still hide the doily, and she would get my daughter involved. She'd get my son involved. It was this big game, and we laughed so much. Think about what laughing does. That's stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to help you release a lot of this tension and strain. There's a lot of tension and strain going on when you're dealing with, things that are hard. But when we make a decision that we are going to live in cherishable moments, and that our moments and the time that we have, and as little as it might be, or longer and protracted and hard, because we're dealing with a whole lot of things, those cherishable moments become snapshots in your brain. They become embedded in your heart, mind, and soul. Because this is how we cherish that time. Number 3, we have to take moments to just stop and to get out and to spend some time in nature, experiencing a sunset, not just watching it, literally smelling the roses, and just breathing in and breathing out, being connected with our breath. I wrote a note. I wish I had my journal right here. I'd read it to you, but I wrote a note yesterday about how I felt my breath was my guide so much, because oftentimes, we shallow breathe by accident, and we're not breathing deeply enough. So if we start to breathe deeply, to breathe in, breathe in whatever it is that we need to, breathe in love, exhale stress, and say that even as we're doing it, just I'm breathing in love, I'm exhaling the stress, because our bodies listen to us at every moment. If we're telling ourselves all the time, I'm so exhausted, your body's like, okay, let's start cooperating with what she's asking for. It's not that simple. It's not, like that, of course, but it is something that we need to be recognizing, that our thoughts become our reality if we say it often enough. So we have to also take time out and take just a moment, take a bath, do self-care things that say your time, your cherishable time, is also cherishable time with yourself and not everybody else. Joanne said yesterday she saw 2 rainbows. It was great to just take in, and she felt blessed by them. That's just it right there. And that's a moment. When Caroline and Sam, my son-in-law, got married, it was in this barn down in Fort Mill, South Carolina, and it rained. And it was like this big cathedral barn. It was so beautiful. And it rained like gangbusters while they were getting married. And then they came out, the clouds were parting. And I think it's on my Facebook page, in my personal page with all the pictures. There's a double rainbow going right over the very top of them. And Fillmore Strunk, who's pastor, friend of mine, Episcopal pastor, Anglican pastor forever and ever, he said, surely God was in this place, was what he captioned the picture that he took of them. That, it, of course, made me cry my eyes out. That was a cherishable moment. And that was something that I will never forget. The picture is a reminder, but I saw it from my own eyes. And I remember sitting there thinking, don't ever forget this, Leanne. Don't ever forget this. They're holding hands. They're looking at the wind is blowing through there. I mean, it was just like a movie. There's a Bible verse in the Psalms: suffering may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Suffering is a part, unfortunately, of the human equation. It is part of what we all go through. And I don't think we should dismiss and try to run from suffering. Rather, I think we should, and I don't think we should lean into it and embrace it and all of that either. But you know what I think it is? I think what it is that when the suffering comes, we can feel and empathize with others around us who are suffering. We can feel and we can empathize with the joint suffering in the universe, even if you want to go that woo-woo out there. But it's true. There's a sisterhood of suffering out there. We don't need to live in our suffering, but we need to experience it and know from it that it's okay. It's not to be lived over and over again and put it on repeat and have that be a negative loop and have that be the plumb line of your life. But certainly suffering is part of what it is that we do. The joy cometh in the morning is that the sun does come up and the sun does shine again. And that there will be other times, not to dismiss, not to say that this was not a sufferable moment, not to say that the suffering wasn't valid, but to say that there will still be joy. There will still be other things. There will still be love in your life. When my girlfriend lost her 12-year-old daughter I was telling you about, they made a decision, oh my gosh, and how many years ago was this? I was like, her daughter would be a high school graduate now, I think. But they made a decision about 3 years ago to adopt, and they adopted a little girl. That's their joy coming in the morning. Does it replace doesn't replace anything. We can't replace. But what we can do is add in. We can always bring in more joy. I is trivial, in light of all these heavy things that we're talking about. When I lost my dog, David Dog, his name was David. My son named him as a child, a 6-year-old. When I lost David, and he was in my son's arm, I just sat there bawling my eyes out. I said, I'll never be able to have another dog again, ever. Well, that little David dog, that little Lincoln dog out there, he sure reminds me a lot of how little David was. Not the same dog, not a replacement of that dog, but certainly a new, different type of joy that came, 10 years later. That's how it works. That's our human experience jointly, all of us. No one gets an exempt card. No one gets to say, no one gets the card that says, hey, look what I got. It says I'm never going to suffer. It's just not true. It's just what we do with the suffering and how we experience the joy that will come in the morning. And not to compare them, but instead to experience that and to know that suffering happened for a reason, but it doesn't need to be the full context of what our life is. And then there's some real to-do things. And I wrote to reflect by using a journal and to allow when it comes to come. The waves come, right? The waves come. All of a sudden you'll have a moment where you're thinking about everything. And, when it comes, and you allow for it. You feel it. It's not that it needs to be dismissed, but we also need to know that at some point we need to, it's time to move to the next thing, to allow for it, but then to not allow it to take over either. Does that make sense? And that's why I journal. And journal is a great thing. And I, occasionally I'm going to be journaling about things like, my mom's death soon coming up. I can feel it. It's on the cusp. I don't live it daily. Every day I'll see something that probably reminds me of her. Every time a butterfly comes fluttering in my peripheral, I'll always say, hey, Mom. I expect that it's a little visitation from her, just reminders that there's things about me. I have a little sign up here that my daughter gave me. I got it from my mama. I've got a picture of her and I together right across the way there from us. I have a picture right across the way here of my children running across the field with the goats in their big rubber boots. And I took that picture that I found. I don't know who, I think, probably my ex-husband took the picture. And I found it was just a snapshot. I found it and I put it in a frame and said, that is the moment that I'll never forget. I saw that every single day. And I have it now just framed forever. And I look at it especially when they make me feel a little cranky, like, can't they just get it? They're adults now. And I look at that and it makes me happy. Shift. But you got to reflect and you got to journal. This is how we kind of get some of this stuff out. Number 6 is meditation. It is a centering practice to help you to be centered and to be inside of yourself and connected with all the things, with God, with the Holy Spirit, with your soul, with your own intuition, with your higher self. I believe that inside of us is just like this huge place of warmth and growth, or it could be small and stony like, because we haven't let anything in. But if we want to grow and experience and be more connected, then we have to experience meditation and prayer. We have to. And number 7 is communicate and connect. Now, this cherishable moment, the thing that I was going to tell you about my mom, when my mom was passing, and you learn a lot from a hospice nurse, by the way. And if you have a hospice nurse, if you're dealing with a parent, I hope you have a good hospice. I hope you have a good hospice nurse, because there's these women and men who do this work are angels sent from heaven above, in my opinion. And my hospice nurse said this could happen, where she has this, it's like a death rattle is what they call it. And it's just this horrible thing. And sometimes they get emotional behind it. And my mother got probably one of the worst things. And she was in a assisted living place, and the loudness of it all, my kids were crying and upset. Nobody wanted to be around. You could hear it down at the nurse's station. And I was upset. So I kind of came in there And I saw my mother, laying in just the changes of the face and everything. And I got into bed with her and I held her and cradled her in my arms like a baby, her head. And I looked into her eyes and I said, Mom, look at me, Mama. And I said to her, you can leave now. We're all okay. We're all here and we love you. You can take our love with you and I am going to keep your love with me. That's never going to leave. We will never lose that. You might go somewhere else, but we're never going to lose that. And she quieted. She quieted and she just looked into my eyes. That's a connection. That's a connection. And that's how we build these cherishable moments, so that when we have time where we have to, go to a difficult place like that, we can. We can, because as much as the tears were flowing, worse than now, as much as it was so hard, it was built on a relationship that was built on communication, cherishable moments, loving on purpose, daily. Daily. I didn't miss that opportunity. I don't have any regrets. That's what living with the cherishable moments is about. Lily, my darling Lily, I'm with you. Do not be afraid. Be full of love. Be the light that your mother needs right now. Joanne just said it. Love never ends. It does not, especially when you're cherishing those moments. Okay? Who's gonna put that on their list of things to do? I sure appreciate you. Thank you so much for showing up today. This meant something to you, or it might mean something to someone who's going through something difficult right now and needs maybe to hear a little bit about cherishable moments. Would you share this with them? Thank you so much for joining me today. Peace be with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.